So I'm Reese Finnegan. I'm a curatorial intern at Alpha. I'm the one who's been emailing you a bit the past few
Hmm.
weeks. It's nice to finally meet you, sort of in person at least.
Yeah, definitely.
How are you? You're based in New Jersey, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm out of state, but I've heard you guys have been getting a ton of rain these past few weeks. And
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it has been pretty rainy over there, but
yeah,
I'm in New York right now for residency, but I am kind of like going back and forth between New Jersey and there a
cool.
little bit.
But let's focus on your art a little bit more. So based on what I've read about you on your website, it seems like art has kind of always been your focus. And then you went to art school, you've been kind of creating ever since. So I'm
Hmm.
curious about what initially drew you to becoming an artist.
Yeah, a good question. I would say that the biggest part of it was definitely I started just drawing random comics with my cousin in New York City. And that's kind of like, but that was way back, in the day. I think that was kind of like the first thing that I remember really enjoying about the art process. And then, as I went into middle school and high school, you know, especially high school, I started drawing a lot more, whether it was from, anime, whether it was from cartoons, whether it was from life, and getting involved in that. And that's kind of like, I think it was the maturation of high school that has made me feel like, okay, when I get to the next level, I actually want to continue art in some version. And so I eventually went into art education because I love teaching it as well. I was a TA when I was in high school. And so that ended up translating for me during that period of time. And then the last version of kind of like that maturation of my art process was a little bit when I was into my teaching career. I eventually decided to get my MFA in drawing and painting.
Cool, that's exciting. Um, and so sort of more on the inspiration behind your work. I know a lot of your work focuses on political and social themes.
Mhm,
What would you say led you to doing, I guess, sort of like fun art, entertainment art, comics,
mhm.
that sort of thing, to being more of a political focus?
The political focus came when I was in college, just in school, because I was always very political, but I never mixed it into my work. I started out originally as someone who was just, drew fan art, and things like that, or drew people, but it wasn't any kind of like conceptual heft to it. And that was changed as I during that period where I graduated from undergrad and went into grad school, where I was actually able to not just think about the aesthetics of my work, but how I can actually bring what I already thought about, which is a lot of political, socio-political issues, into my work. And so I started to combine the aesthetics of the work with the concept.
Nice, nice. And then in terms of artistic style, who would you say your biggest influences are there? Were there any artists that sort of inspired you particularly, or?
I would say that definitely Kendi Wiley. Is probably one of my the artists that really inspires me. He's very much representational artist, an appropriation artist as well. So I would say him. I really love the development and seeing kind of like his process and seeing how he thought about his process in his work, and taking past paintings, and past works and bringing people of the African diaspora inside of those works was really stood out to me as an artist.
Nice. Um, so for this exhibition in particular, I believe you submitted pieces from several of your recent series,
Mhm,
most notably the Periphery series, the Serenity
mhm,
series. Can you talk a little bit about each of those, and what you want the
mhm,
viewer to take from your work
mhm.
when doing these?
Yeah. And so my Serenity series is definitely dealing with the aspect of negative portraiture. And this was just me taking images from people that I've met across all walks of life. They may be friends, they may be associates, maybe strangers, or people who I don't know fully. But getting a sense of who they are through those photos, and also taking the usage of the profile in those works and turning it into something that can be beautiful can be seen, so that the person in the actual painting can be seen. And this was something, that idea of the profile and using portraiture in my work was something that I ended up continuing into with my periphery series, but it's much more dealing with body language responses to stereotype threat. And so in the periphery series, one of the things I'm really dealing with is the usage of the hoodie as a symbol, and what that symbol means on Black men and on Black women in America, and some of the stereotypes that get placed on what people wear in that point of time. And so using that and going through these different body language expressions through my periphery series was just a way to highlight the views of people and what they put upon someone in contemporary society. And so that's what I'm really dealing with a lot in that periphery series.
Yeah. So with that, would you say your inspiration for those series came from a similar place as previous works or somewhere new?
Yeah, I would say it comes from a place as pat of it comes from a place where I'm taking some of a previous or past ideas, but bringing it into something new and into new contexts.
Yeah, I noticed sort of both of those series you've been working on for several years. And there's been a lot in current events in the past few years with the sort of issues. Um,
Mhm.
was that a big part of your inspiration as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like for example, my periphery series was based on the Trayvon Martin case in 2012, and the kind of like
Wow.
the hoodies up movement during that time. So I've taken and I in that inspiration for my work was based on that, and so I'm always taking from current events over long periods of time and placing them into my work.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned the use of the profile as well, which is something I picked up on as a common theme
Hmm.
throughout all of your recent work, and actually some of your earliest works as well. I
Hmm.
noticed. Do you mind saying a little bit more about that stylistic choice?
Definitely. And so looking through the profile means you can't see the full person. And so being able to view it through the profile was me emphasizing the idea of marginalized identity, of people not being able to see who someone is from all different vantage points, which played a lot in a lot of my series because I'm dealing with that idea of what does it mean to have a certain marginalized identity or have it in certain contexts in America. And so exploring that usage of the profile helps me do it from a vantage point.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that made me think of was the idea of when taking a picture, like get my good side, don't get my bad
Hmm.
side.
Hmm.
That different people have different, I
Hmm.
guess, personas depending on who's viewing them and in what context.
Yeah. So that emphasis on those vantage points and how people see you from different angles was definitely something that I was thinking about when I was thinking about using that idea of the profile throughout my different series.
Um, so throughout your different series, I've noticed that there's a few different stylistic changes in your work across your career. Your Dream Deferred series, which focuses on the shrinking of the American dream in the 21st century. Um, in that was mostly done with pencil drawing, lino cut, and then your next series, which you did in 2018, focuses on housing discrimination. That was a series of collages, and then your
Hmm.
most recent three series have all been oil paintings, oil pastel,
Hmm.
and sort of shared similar focuses. What would you say inspired you to take those different paths throughout your career?
Hmm. I guess that first, like for example, in the Red series where I'm dealing with collage, those were actually originally one of my first pieces that I was doing because I just wanted to explore a conceptual idea. You know, I was working as someone who always loved drawing and painting. I just wanted to experiment with that idea. And actually now I'm kind of coming back to and kind of like full circle back to the idea and thinking about combining, multiple series together. And that's one of the series that I've been like really looking back and researching and just kind of like exploring it again. And so in that series, I just wanted to explore using materials that were outside of what I already did. And so using collage or building out, wood backing with collage and putting them together was something that I was really interested in kind of like seeing how it can bring out, new contexts in materials that I'm not really focused on. And then A little bit later on, I did a printmaking residency at the Gutenberg Art Center in Gutenberg, New Jersey. And in the Dream Deferred series, it was originally pencil, as you kind of mentioned, where I was responding to the poem Harlem by Langston Hughes, where he's asking what happens to that dream deferred. Does it stink like rotten meat? So he's asking a lot of these questions. Does it explode? Does it sag like a heavy load? And then my works um, uh, in the printmaking pieces were a response to it. And so some of the printmaking pieces, I have poppies that are sagging like a heavy load, or I'm exploding and things that are, festering over in those pieces. And so each one of those were kind of like the responses. Whereas earlier, when I was doing some of the pencil drawings, it was more so showing the actual preamble to the American Constitution slowly shrinking. And so I took a different tack to it in my later printmaking pieces and how I wanted to actually respond to that poem. And then, of course, later on for my weight series, I'm so more so dealing with the interview portion. And this was and usually a lot of my works, I'm just focusing on creating the work and it's just me. Whereas in kind of like the weight series pieces, I'm actually interacting with my subjects, which is one of the first things that I'm ever doing. Like, for example, there's one piece there that's called Weight Series Hoodie, where essentially I was speaking to each one of my subjects and asking them, you know, what is your relationship to this concept of the American dream? Do you believe in it? And he was mentioned that he didn't, and he remembered a specific moment where he was in the store and he was racially profiled, and people were looking at him a certain way because he was wearing a hoodie, and he didn't even know about my Periphery series. And so it was interesting how it kind of like came full circle back to that idea of how people perceive you based on what you're wearing. And so being able to explore and hear other people's stories was also something that was really powerful for me.
Um, I don't know why that reminded me of sort of what it says on your website about your parents and immigration and sort of
Hmm.
growing up in New York. And I'm wondering how that sort of plays into this as well for you.
And that was the entire reasoning behind the Weight series, because when I speak to my parents, my parents came here, and really kind of like in that dawn of the 1990s time, and they came from Guyana here to America and immigrated, expecting, to get a hold of that idea of the American dream. But along the way, and one of the things that they mentioned is there is a little bit of a disillusionment to it, because they realized that when they came here, they had to work really hard. Whether it's two jobs or whatever they had to do to try to scrounge and try to survive in America. Just due to the cost of living, and it's even more now. I can't imagine the people are trying to come from other countries or immigrate here to America with the cost of living what it is currently. And so that disillusionment with that concept of the American dream was what spurred me to even start the Wade series.
So I know you mentioned earlier you got sort of into art more with the idea of teaching it. And I know you've given a lot of artistic talks over your career. Can you talk about doing that a little bit more?
So I've always been an educator. I mentioned that I kind of started that process even in, high school. I had a love for art and I had a love for helping people with art. And so that just played into me just wanting to speak about my work, and just and due to the fact that my work is very social, political, and research heavy, it lends itself to that. And so kind of like throughout the process, I've always been an educator, whether it's at the high school level or the college level. Being able to communicate with other people is part of an artist's job. We communicate not just only with our pieces, but when we're speaking about our pieces, with our words or through workshops. And so that process of actually speaking about my work is also part of my art practice too.
And I know as well you're doing a residency right now. So how does that fit into all of this for you?
Yeah, because in the painting side of myself, I do a lot of oil painting and sometimes acrylic painting. And so right now I'm at the Golden Foundation residency. And the Golden and the Golden Foundation residency is based off of the Golden Artist Colors manufacturing company, which makes really good acrylic paints. And they also have oils as well, but they're really known for their acrylics, and of course mediums and grounds. And so essentially, it's a month-long residency, usually 3 artists at a time, where we get away. I'm in New Berlin, New York, right now. They have workshops where we work with paint technicians and experiment with their colors, whether it's oils, whether it's acrylics, whether it's mediums, and just learn new ways to use different types of paints. And these are things that will allow us to be inspired when we're actually creating future pieces of work. And so that's one of the things I really love about this residency, is giving us a chance to experiment with a wide array of paint from paint technicians here at an actual paint manufacturing company.
Would you say oil paint is your primary medium, or
Yeah, but for the painting side of me, oil paints, and then for the drawing side of me, oil pastels.
nice? Any reason why, or
I don't know. I just think I really love the idea of being able to blend,
okay.
and kind of like, and oil pastels, because they have a slower drying time than acrylic. I love kind of like actually working as I go along. But also the really good thing that I'm doing here now is that the Golden Artist Colors company has slow drying acrylics as well, which work in a similar way, which kind of slow down the drying time, because acrylics usually dry, well, acrylics dry faster than oils. And so that's also something that's very interesting. But I just love the slow drying time of oils, so that brought me to it. Anything that I'm able to blend and that facilitates blending processes, whether it's oil paint, oil pastels, is something that I'm really drawn to.
So when you're working through your artistic process, is it are you the kind of person who gets like a ton of work done really quickly, or are you the kind of person who works on the same piece for
Mhm.
like extended amounts of time?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a same piece person. And when I lock in, I'm usually able to work, and I usually have like a prescribed amount of what I want to do. So, like, let's say I have a drawing or a painting that I'm going to do. I usually break it up into maybe like pieces, and I say I'm going to complete this to this section of this painting today, or this to this section of the painting today. So I actually break it up into how much parts of the painting that I want to create.
Very regimented approach.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Especially when I'm able to kind of like lock in and kind of like focus. I've been doing much more kind of like that organizational part. So I'm able to kind of like keep myself on the schedule.
Nice. Yeah. That's 2024. Gotta be scheduled even in art, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned this residency is where is it in New York?
New Berlin, New York. So
And
it's all the way
where's the
upstate.
yeah, okay, that's literally my next
Yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah.
Because I know you're from New York originally, right?
Born and raised.
And so how was that growing up shaping your artistic abilities? I mean, New York is such a great cultural city.
hmm Well, I left when I was young in elementary school, but it definitely did shape me, because I still remember, like I was mentioning, those moments where I was just drawing comics with my cousin or just playing around in a sketchbook. And so I think it started there. So it's made me realize that I've always had a love for creating. And so that's kind of like how I remember that portion of my life.
I'm just curious now, which comics were you really into when you were a kid?
Huh, that's a good question. It was more so just drawing random superheroes that I would create.
Okay, all
So it
right.
wasn't so much like focusing on but just kind of like creating my own worlds, you
That's
know? So
exciting, I
I
guess.
guess the
Yeah.
creative mind kind of
Yeah.
comes alive there at a young age. So yeah.
Was it more I guess the art of it than the storyline for you?
Yeah, I think it was the art, because I don't think I had any knowledge of any type of storyline back then.
You wouldn't make
Yeah.
your own stories up, just the action scene stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a lot of action scenes. That was pure. That was all it was.
That's
Yeah.
that's the best part. That's the part everyone cares about, right?
Yep, yep.
Sweet. Is there anything else you really want to discuss while we're on here? Anything super important to you?
Hmm. I don't think so. Yeah, I think like I said, each one of what I'm working on has a special importance, and I really kind of like appreciate not just kind of like using um what I've learned from, like I said, history or or social political issues in my work, but also showing my work as well. So yeah, this has been great.
Sweet. Last question then. Where do you see yourself going from here?
Definitely scale, working with scale as well, larger works, and also because I already have a lot of different series that I've been working on, and now I'm interested in actually working on combining series together, exploring multiple different angles of that as well. And so I'm looking forward to working through that process as well during the summer, but the later parts of the summer.
Sure. After this residency ends, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Sweet. All right. Well, it's been really great talking to you. I'm sure I'll be in touch more in the
Hmm.
next weeks and months. And
Yeah,
have a great rest of your afternoon, I guess.
yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks
Thanks.
a lot. Thank you for your time.
All right, bye.
Have a good one.